Hi, it's Friday, like around 10 o'clock. It's at 10:01, at least on the clock that's over there. Um, and this is going to be, I don't know how relaxing it's going to be. Why does it, my camera person is just not really on top of things here. Okay, yeah. And I don't know what to do about this. It's always right in front of me. And I can move away from the camera, but then the stuff I'm doing is under the camera and my head is over here, so that doesn't work. I'm going to be complaining today because things didn't go that well. That didn't go well yesterday when I was painting these parts that I was going to paint green. They're green, not black, it's green. But it just didn't go well, and I'll explain why. This went okay. These little bits, they're primed, and I'm going to make an effort today to paint them. I'm not quite sure how that's going to go. Yeah, the one that I was afraid of that has a big nick in it. Yeah, that nick really shows. I don't know what to do about that. It's really hard to see. It's this one right here. Yeah. See if I can pull it out and show it to you. There's I could feel it when I was sanding it off. No, you can't. I don't think that focuses there. There's a little chunk taken out of the top of the velocity tube, and yeah, that has to be fixed. I'm not sure how. And then I can see where the sprue was. Okay, so I'm gonna have to do some adjusting on these little bits. So I'm not sure how far I'm going to get today. There's this one needs some filling in. I have to all 8 of these little velocity tubes that, yeah, now that I primed them and I don't have the glossy chrome plating in the way, I can see that I need to do some sanding on almost all of these. The filler caps are ready to paint. So I might just go ahead and do that. As is this little wrench-shaped thing, which is the brace for the Nerf bar, it's called, which is a rear bumper, which is these pieces which have fallen apart. So the finishing up of this model is going to be, I don't know, it's like you get down to the end of any restoration project, 95% restored, and then doesn't go any further. So, yeah, some work needs to be done on the velocity tubes, and I'll be doing that even though after the model is put together, they're covered by these and no one will ever see them. So why am I bothering? I don't know. But speaking of these, this is the part that definitely didn't go well, is that the green paint has to come off and I have to start over. There's a couple of things wrong with this. One is, well, one thing that happened, this was just dumb luck and just maybe not being totally careful, is I painted them and they looked pretty good. And I put one in here and I put one in here and this one flopped over. I don't know how it managed to do it. It was angled just wrong, just absolutely wrong. And it bumped into the other one and took off a little bit of the paint. And then I sprayed it again to attempt to cover up the part that had been unpainted, and somehow or other, the top of this one got all bubbly. So I think what's happened, I'm using this paint that's like 15, 20, I don't know, ancient. It's just really ancient. I bought it maybe 7 or 8 years ago. It's not that ancient, but pretty old. I think that might be part of the problem. But I have to take the paint off and start over. The other thing that happened here is, you might recall, I took all the chrome plating off except around the rivets here. And you can see that there's a textural difference in the paint. It didn't get, it got shiny and glossy like it should, just on the very, very fronts of these. Okay. Just on the very fronts of these, but then the sides and the top didn't. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And then there's a slight textural difference between this part here, which was down to the chrome was off, and then here where the chrome is. So yeah, the green paint has to come off, and I have to start over with painting these. And I bought a new can of the green paint, and I'm going to use that on these and the rest of the body when it comes to it. Hate to waste a can of paint, but it's old, and it's just, I think it's past its useful life. I'd really like it if a solvent were to take this paint off. I don't know if the isopropyl alcohol will do it. If this was acrylic paint, the brush-on stuff that I use, that would be fine, but this is not an acrylic. The spray paint is a different composition, but I'll play with that a little bit later. What am I going to do today here? I'm going to start with something that is getting something done. I'm going to start by getting something done. I'm going to paint the tops of the filler caps. And then I am going to do some fine tuning. Well, actually, this one that has the gap in it that I knew was there because I could feel it. There, I can paint this thing too. Any little pieces here. This is some sort of ignition thing. It's called an ignition bit. There, that's going to be painted too. Let me find the one. Great. Now it's all getting lost in the cushion that I put here. And now there's only 7 of them. There's 8 of them. I have to find the one that's flawed, and I'm going to fill it in with the green putty because that stuff sets up pretty quickly. Yeah, I know. Here it is. Yes, there it is. That's the one with the little nick in it. Okay. Trying to not lose these. I have a plan about how to hold these when I'm painting them. I'm going to test it now on this one. Is, ordinarily I would kind of grab it like this, okay, and then stick it in the holder thing, but I'm going to let this lay down flat there. And as long as that doesn't pop off, if it did, it'll go, and who knows where it'll end up. I'll be able to paint all the surfaces of these little things, and I have alligator clips laying all over the place, 8 of them, holding on to these right at the bottom like that. And then all the alligator clips will have aluminum paint on them. There it is. There's the green stuff. I have to go get some new toothpicks. My supply of toothpicks has been I've been using them up. Okay. Bit of green putty on there, and then I will gently sand that down. Hopefully it will adhere. No, it can't get any worse. So, yeah, the big thing, I'm going to do these little things just to get something done that isn't discouraging. I was very discouraged with those parts. That did not bode well for the rest. So the other thing that's going to be delaying the construction of this model, besides having to take paint off and start over on the air scoops that go over the velocity tubes that I'm going to be painting that will then become invisible, is that 6.35 millimeters is not the same as 6. And so the 6 millimeter tape that I bought is too narrow. And so I ordered some 1/4-inch tape. I went to the hobby store, and the tape they had was in millimeters, not inches. 1/4 inch is 6.35 millimeters, And as we saw on Wednesday, that was enough to be. It was enough to be able to tell the difference. Tell you what, since I've got all this tape now, I've got all these packages of tape. Now I got 2 10-millimeter packages of tape. Why? I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I bought one not remembering that I had one. So now I've got 2. So I'm going to use some of it because I've got it. Just get up and wander off camera. The good news is I wandered off camera, but I remembered that I was supposed to come back after I wandered off. So that's pretty good. Well, there was some good news on these, though. The good news is that I was successful at hiding the seam. Okay, the sanding that I did, the seam doesn't show, so you can't tell that this used to be 2 different pieces. But it needs to be redone. But what I'm doing here, because I want to paint these, the bottoms don't need to be painted, so I'm just going to stick a little piece of tape here. Okay. And stick the part on there so that I can paint it and it won't move. Okay, this is a nice, just the right width for this sort of thing. Look at that. This one's going to be painted a different color. beginning to think that my monologue today is just going to be complaining about stuff. A weather front has come through, which was supposed to have been bringing a bunch of rain, but it did. It brought a bunch of rain, but it was 3 miles south of us, and we just got little bits of it. So it has stayed fairly dry. Looks like I didn't. I thought I got that. Part's not right. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding on that, just to get it to look the way it's supposed to look, I think. And then I'm going to be doing some sanding on the velocity tubes as well. Now, it wasn't a surprise. Okay, it wasn't a surprise that after they were primed, I could see some of the flaws that were invisible because of the chrome plating. So these I'm going to paint a bright aluminum color. It's called chrome, but it's not really chrome. I used it on the roll bar. It's just kind of shiny. This is an ignition. It's supposedly an ignition. So that's actually going to get painted. I'm going to paint this a darker color. I'm tempted to paint it just dark aluminium. I was almost tempted to paint it steel because some of the other detail on the inside. Hi, who? Oh, you don't have your flip thing going yet, do you? Yeah, I'm complaining about having to take the paint off of these because the spray paint didn't. It's not good. It's not glossy like it's supposed to be. It's got a bad texture. One of them formed bubbles. I don't know what's going on there. Look at that. Just like bubbled up almost. So I have to try to take the paint off, and I want to take it off. I prefer not to do it mechanically. I mean, sanding it off, I can do that, but I want to see if I can dissolve it off. Let's do some flips before I start painting. Put this up over. I'm going to set this over here where it'll fall or something. I'm in the mood for this one. I'm in the mood for living or not living. Yeah. That's lucky. 2 livings. 2 to 1. 3 to 1. Four to 2. Living beats not living. 4 to 2 today. I guess that's a good sign. I'll take that as a plus. So you ever going to get the flip emoji back? I really kind of looked forward to seeing that every now and then. It add a little bit of liveliness to this otherwise definitely not very lively stream. There was some motion, like things were happening. Okay. So you have to wait for that. Well, I'm going to paint these parts just so I get something done today, and that might be practically all that happens. I don't know. I should be able. I can try to paint this. This little bit here. Okay. I have to paint it on one side and then flip it over and paint the other because there's no way to hold it anywhere. There just isn't. So, yeah, I'm going to do that. Why not? What could go horribly wrong with that? I'm doing this stuff inside this box. I talked about that on Wednesday because these parts are really tiny, and there's always the possibility that they might try to escape, by me dropping them or putting them on an alligator clip or tweezers and having them pop off. So this somewhat reduces the possibility of having them go flying onto the floor, getting lost forever. So these are going to I'm going to use 3 different colors here. This is going to be a great waste of paint. So why am I using 3 different shades of aluminum paint? You can ask that. And I'll say, because I want this to be just regular aluminum. These are going to be slightly shinier aluminum, and this is going to be dark aluminum because that's how I'm doing it. I'm going to see if with these little bits, whether I can get away with not squeezing it out of the bottle. Okay, by just using the little bits that are in the bottle cap. Losing that, and I'm going to want it later. I should paint with the light. Yeah, I should do that. Use the lighter shade first. Okay, I'm doing it all backward here. I just thought about this since I'm using the same brush on all of these. I'm going to use the lighter shades first. Do the lighter shades, and then the slightly darker, and then the slightly darker, so that if there's any paint still left on this, it won't make it darker. I'm just going to be doing little junk today. Painting these little bits, cleaning these little bits up, and hopefully painting them too. I'd like to be able to do that. Trying to get the paint, and then trying to get the paint off of these. The test of the stripe, the yellow stripe, is being deferred until I get the 1/4-inch tape because the 6mm tape is too narrow. I mean, noticeably narrow. And I want it to not be noticed. This over here so I can, here, the idea here is for this to flip over and the paint to run out and get all over everything. It's just make a mess. So it's almost like I'm intentionally trying to make a mess. That's not true, but and I intentionally squeezed out a second drop, which I absolutely didn't need. Okay. This is the relaxing painting part of relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. This is it. So if you're watching this, if like you're catching this on YouTube, just keep replaying this little bit, this like few seconds of this stream, because this is probably as relaxed and relaxed and as painting as anything is going to get today. So what I was saying, though, before I stopped saying it, is that the rain largely missed us. We did get some, not nearly as much as we would have liked to have gotten. Okay. But the front that came through was a change in pressure. And I know that I've read that there isn't any real scientific evidence that changes in pressure can make one feel achy, but it just does. You know, it's one of those things that I just have to say from personal experience of being achy. I'm pretty achy today, and I'm going to blame it on the weather. I don't know if that's fair to the weather or not. Maybe it's not. I think there's enough paint. Just see this bottle cap, kind of this little bits of bubbly. No, you can't see it because it's off camera. Like, just here. There's bubbly bits here. That's paint, and I can just grab that and use that instead of squeezing a whole drop out like I did with the even lighter color. And squeezing a whole drop out and wasting that paint. Waste not, want not. There's a downside to that, though. You know, the not waste not, don't get it done because you don't use it. It's like, oh, don't waste that paint. Okay, then I don't paint anything. And then that misses the whole point of painting because I didn't use the paint because I didn't want to waste it. That became incoherent, didn't it? No, but that goes back to the stories I was telling from when I was younger and lived in a family of a father who grew up as a child during the Depression, and it's like if you use that up, you might not be able to get it again. That kind of thing. This is a tiny little piece here, so I'm going to do the same thing. As I'm going to just use a little bubble of paint that accumulated in the top of the paint container. I really like these darker shades of metallic. I think they look really good. Oh yeah, that's splattered. See, I closed these with a paper towel because they spatter like that, and usually it gets all over my hands. Today it didn't. That's kind of weird. Okay, that was relaxing, tiny little bits of relaxing painting stuff. Right, mostly clean brush. I'm gonna keep the tweezers out. Move this back up. Camera person, pay attention to things. All right. So the next thing, I'm just doing miscellaneous things one after the other, kind of that have to be done, like those needed to be painted. And then I need to remember to flip this one over after the paint dries and paint the other side. I don't know if I'll remember that or not. I guess we'll find out. So the next step is to make sure all 8 of these are okay. And what happened was that there was a sprue on each one there, so they're not round on the top, and they're not going to be. Okay, just looking at it, I can tell that the build quality, the molding quality is not great. But what I can do is I can, like these little, it just sticks out a little bit. Okay, where I was rubbing away where the sprue was attached, but it I couldn't see how well I did until after the priming was done. So it's just little touches of sanding to make it look less asymmetric. Yeah. Oh no. Okay. There was more than one with a little gap here. I have some green stuff putty on the other one, but I didn't know that there was a second one. So now that I know that, and there might be more, I will go ahead and try to fill that in also. You can just see it there. There's this little nick. Okay. And that was there just from the molding. It was just not done correctly. I'm going to put this tiniest little bit of green stuff on that. And hopefully that will dry, cure, whatever the appropriate word is, quickly. So that later in the stream, I can touch it up. I can sand it down and paint it. And I'll put them over here. There. I'm putting it with the other one where that is being done. these back in here. Okay, this one's pretty badly misshapen. Really badly misshapen. Yeah, so the sprue was attached there, which gave it, a big lump of plastic. And I thought I had gotten it down, but at the time I knew that with the chrome plating, just made it really hard to see. And after it's painted white with the primer, it becomes a lot more obvious. This one too, you can see where it's not round there, little point. Yeah. So I'm doing all of this, and I just keep thinking these are going to be invisible. Once these parts that need to be redone are put on, it covers them up. One thing I am thinking of doing is not cementing those on. If they set on, like if they set on and hold on just like with gravity or friction, I would leave them uncemented so you could take them off and look at these parts that I'm spending all this time trying to make look good. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time and everybody else's time by even bothering with these parts at all. Such is the way of things. This one was actually not too bad. Huh. 1 out of 8. This one's pretty close. Now I could get impatient and paint the 6 of them that are okay, and then paint the other one too later. But I'm going to just wait on that and move on to other bits of details that needs to be done. So there is that. There's these things. I wonder how these are turning out. These are the mirrors that might actually be okay. I'm going to clean these up. One side is the attachment point, this one. That's where it attaches to the car, and the other side is where the sprue is, and that needs to come off. But the filler looks like it did I'm going to prime it just to see how it looks. The filler looks like it gave it a nice, smooth, concave surface that might paint up nicely. I'm not sure. I'll find out. So these are going to get primed and painted in the near future. Again, these are just really difficult to work with because they're hard to hold on to. A dark background. This is I shouldn't do that there. That's just asking for a disaster. That's asking for it to slip out of my hands and fall on the floor. I mean, it could happen here too. Could have filed this down more quickly without really hurting anything. It's very, very bad here. Just a very bad place to put the sprue. So the face of the mirror, the thing that's white now, because I've got a plastic filler on there, was had a divot in it. And it was nice and shiny, okay, because it was chrome plated, but it had a hole in it, which you can still kind of see. The hole is filled in, but you can see where it was because the filler is thicker where the hole was. And of course, the sprue is on the very, very outside of the mirror. So this is on, and it's like, oh yeah, and we're going to put it there so that it is highly visible, so that the flaw is clear to everybody. Use the file real carefully on that. Don't do that. Just need to, there's just this little bit of overhang just right there that I can't get with the sandpaper. Yeah, that's okay. See what's up with this one. There isn't quite as much sprue on it. File it down just little bits and then sand it. Yeah, that's the dropping it on the dropping it in the box as opposed to on the floor. That was an example of it right there. Oh, what should I talk about? I know I really need to talk with Alexis about whether we can get the music back, because then I can just go quiet and there'll be music playing in the background, But we wanted to be real soothing. Like, I've been told that some people listen to this stream, they don't watch it, they just listen to it because they want to go to sleep. And my monologue about whatever is so exciting that they just fall asleep. I guess I took that sort of as a compliment, I guess, which means that I'm serving some sort of purpose in somebody's life by helping them fall asleep. Okay, well, it's like the fourth time I've dropped that. And if I had been doing this over the hard surface of the workbench, it would have hit and bounced. Odds are pretty high that this piece would have been disappeared by now. Okay, well, it's not perfect, but it's also not lost, and it looks way better than it did when it had that divot in it. So I'm going to declare that a success. Those need to be primed. The chrome plating on the back is actually the best chrome plating on any of the parts so far. But yeah, it has to be painted over. I'm going to end up using this same piece of cardboard here for priming these. So I'll set those over there out of the way. These are still the green stuff is still setting up. I think it should go like half an hour at least. So I'm going to wait until, I don't know, 11:30 maybe. Do something else in the meantime. Well, there's something else. There's a couple of something else's I could be doing. One is, oh yeah, I can unclamp the fourth wheel. There, this is doing a thing. Yeah, scrape the paint. Nice. There's a big scar on the rim of the wheel. Why is there a scar on the rim of the wheel? I don't know. But there is. And fixing that would be really difficult. I've got these clamps. I need to put them somewhere. Okay. So what needs to be done on these, now that they are adequately clamped, is they need to be washed off because there's little dust bits all over them. Okay. Things like that where that little shiny thing is happening. See it flashing? That's the chrome plating underneath. I need to do some paint touch up on all of these. Okay, front and back. You can barely see it, but it says Firestone. Those are raised letters. Is after I clean them, I can restore the Firestone on all of them, all four, because you can see it just got pretty much wiped out here just from, the process of clamping the wheels together. So I can work on the wheels, and I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to reach over and get them into the in-process box here. Work the wheels and the tires. So yeah, it's touching up the paint, restoring the Firestone logos, and one of the first things I'm going to do is there's this raised ridge, off camera again, raised ridge all around the tire that's supposed to be yellow. I got some yellow chalk. And before I start cleaning this up, I'm going to see whether this works. So if I very slowly and carefully do this, it's not very bright, but it actually is working. See? You can see the raised ridge is taking on some of the yellow chalk, and it makes a yellow line. And not perfect, but it's not bad. If I very carefully clean up around it. Hmm. This is, you know, this is much better than trying to do it with paint because it's just chalk and I can just wash it off. But look, it actually doesn't look too bad. Okay, well that's a possibility then. Is I could spend some time doing that. Um, what I am going to do though is I'm going to clean these off, do the Firestone logo. Maybe I'm going to touch up the paint first after I clean them off. That yellow stripe is probably going to come off because I'm going to be washing these off with some water. So yeah, I'm going to touch up the paint and then do the Firestone logos, and then the yellow stripe. Yeah, see, it's chalk, so it comes right off. So if there's a problem with it, it'll be really easy to clean it up. Every little speck shows on these things. You might notice that these have tape on them saying L and R. That's because these don't fit. They don't fit universally. This one only fits on the left side. The other one only fits on the right side because the holes here and the axle diameter, they're just different from each other. So I have to keep the labels on them. Otherwise, I won't be able to get them on the car when the time comes to do that. That's something I can mess around with today is not putting them on here. This is all full of little bits of plastic. Okay. I'm cleaning these off and then putting them on the paper towel that I was using to catch the little bits of plastic and chrome plating that were coming off of the parts that I was cleaning up. Just I'm really right on top of things today. That was with the camera location today. Maybe I moved, and I just keep moving to the left here. I'm going to shift the original there a little bit. Right. So here are some things I can do while I'm waiting for the green stuff to dry. Is I can work on the wheels here, the tires and the wheels. I'm going to touch up the wheels because there's spots here. You can see some where the chrome plating is just peeking through and making shiny bits. If I remember, this was this one, duraluminum. Going to use a little brush. Because some of these parts are like right along the rim, and I don't want to get the paint on the tire. And then I'll let this dry. It's over. I've got this really loose fitting sweatshirt. You'd say, okay, it's like 85 degrees outside. Why are you wearing a sweatshirt? Well, it's not 85 degrees down here in the basement. It's quite a bit cooler. A sweatshirt. Yeah, this is a day. This is a day where I'm just meandering off. I'd like to get the touched up pretty well. I need to squeeze some out. I need to have a drop of this. I know that after I'm touch things up and I'm, rotating this all over the place to make sure I'm getting all the spots that need to be touched, that when it comes time to assemble this, I'll see that there's still a problem. Like how could I miss that spot? It was not possible to miss that spot, and yet somehow I did. Going to be doing my best to not miss spots. A little less critical on the back here, but I could have sworn there were way more spots than the ones I'm seeing. There's a lot of them here. It's got all messed up down here somehow. That's going to be pretty much invisible. There's a spot there right on the rim. I'm probably going to end up doing this again. Why? Because I'm probably going to end up missing some really obvious places. There. Put it up on end like that, and then I don't have to worry about the paint rubbing off, do I? No. I can just do that. Maybe I should have, yeah. I have to look back over them. I wasn't paying attention to the actual axle part where it meets the axle there. Yeah, that part might actually be visible. I'm just going to go around all of them and touch it and put some paint on them just to be sure. Okay, well, those look not too bad. And like I said, I probably missed spots as I'm attempting to not to do touching up on spots. I'm probably missing spots that needed to be touched up, but at some point, those will get retouched and touched again. Now I've got these things sitting here. They're going to be wanting to roll. I'm going to try to not bump them until I have the opportunity to put them in the box, which is where I should have put them to begin with. When I set them down, I should have set them down like that. So that if they decided to roll around, they'd roll around in the box and not off onto the floor. Right. Well, got two different plastic tubes here. This one's a little too loose. Oh, that one's too big. Okay. So what I'm going to do next, in the spirit of continuing to do little bits of things, is way back here. Remember these parts? These are painted up pretty nicely. This one needs to be flipped over and painted on the other side. And I'm just going to do that because I'm thinking of it. This was painted this color, aluminum. And then after this, I'm going to rearrange stuff here. I need to rearrange stuff. Why? Because everything's getting in the way of everything else. In other words, I have cluttered my work surface. Another serious violation of the New Year's resolution to keep a neat and clean work surface. There's that. This here, I don't know. Why is this little bit here? I don't know. I need to get this out of the way. I really do have a bad mess here. I mean, a lot of clutter. To deal with that, get these little bits of paper towel. At some point, I just don't need these bits of paper towel. I have other paper towels that are not yet turned into little bits. Yeah. So now I'm just scattering them around, reaching over my coffee mug, tempting fate in not a good way. what am I doing? I'm taking these little bits off that I had painted and putting them into these are painted little bit storage bin. They will hopefully stay nicely nestled and not lost. There. I've got one little bit there left. So the thing that these will need to be primed. I'm not sure how what I'd really like to do is, yeah, that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it down like this, prime the face of the mirror, okay, and then stick it mirror down. I'm going to spray the paint on like here and here, right across the front of that, and put that face down, and then prime the back. And there's a lot of chrome plating on that, so I might end up doing it twice. Yeah, those are knocking those over too now. Should leave this in the box. I'm going to just, this cardboard is just too big. Yeah, that'll fit like that. Okay, these tires, this is going to stay here. These guys are going to go on clips like that, and then I'm going to paint them. These tires, as flawed as they are, look at that. What's up with that dimple? That's not good. I'm going to put these room in here. My in-process box needs to be bigger. I have bigger boxes. Maybe I'll do that. That's the done parts box. Here, I'll show you what I'm doing. I've got this box. This box is done because it says done on it. And this is where the chassis, okay, with the suspension and the engine is located. This roll bar is done. So I can just put that there. The exhaust is done. So I can just set that in here too. This toothpick is an important part of painting this. This is done. It's the radiator that goes in. I can't see it. Okay. This goes here like that. Pretty much like that eventually. But it's done, so I can put it in this box. These are in process parts. This is painted yellow, and this is going to be the first part. You can't see it. Really? Okay, the done box is done, so I'm just going to put it aside. Okay, this is painted yellow because the process for painting the stripe is to paint the yellow first, mask over where the stripe is going to be, and then paint it green. Hi, Dutch Dungeons. Thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. Thank you for the follow. This is going to be the first example of the stripe. So this probably could use another coat of yellow, to be honest. There's just a discontinuity in the color. I might do that. I'm not going to get the 1/4-inch tape until next week sometime, so I'm not going to be working on the stripe until then anyway. Yeah, these are parts in process. Okay, so I'm going to put the wheels in here because they're in process, and then I'm going to come back and depending on how the rest of the stream goes, I'm going to come back to them later today. But this box should be, it could be bigger. It would be better if it were bigger, but it's not. So I could get a bigger box. I'm just going to set these up and out of the way. So this is relaxing painting sort of with Dyson Dungeons, and the reason I'm painting a model, I'm working on the Lotus-Ford. This thing, the car that won the Indianapolis 500 in 1965, which was not a breakthrough, actually. The breakthrough was in 1963 and 64, when these modified Formula One cars were brought over to compete with the big car roadsters, often Hauser-powered roadsters, the front engine cars that were the staple of IndyCar racing. It's not IndyCar; it was just called big car. It was just oval racing, open wheel racing at the time. So they came over. The first ones were tested in 1963, and then they actually raced. There were several of them that raced in 1964. The model previous to this, which looked like this, okay, the model is on the box top is actually closer to the 1964 car in terms of its decaling and detailing and exposed velocity stacks and stuff. And the one that actually won in 1965, I don't know why, but that's how the models were made. So in 1964, these things came over, and it was leading the race. Jim Clark was leading the race in the Lotus-Ford in 1964, and there was a tire failure, or whatever reason, the tire blew out. It was a pretty bad crash. He was fortunately not really hurt, but they pulled the other one out of the race. So they didn't win in 64. In 1965, virtually all of the cars that were entered were mid to rear engine, like several of these. There are, I think, 6 of these in the race, this model of Lotus-Ford, because they sold some of these cars to like A.J. Foyt and some of the other fixtures of the race scene back then. And it was inevitable that one of them was going to win because they made up most of the field, actually. But this became famous because it changed, and then no front engine car ever won the Indianapolis 500 again, although the front engine Offenhausers still ran on some of the other circuits and continued to win races for several years. So this kit was a mid-1970s reissue of the original kit, which came out in 1966, I think. I built the original kit. It didn't look anything like this. It was just really a mess. I didn't do any painting. Tube cement got all over everything. It ended up looking like a car, but it wasn't a very nice one. So I'm spending a whole lot of time doing a whole lot of other stuff, like not using the chrome plating and painting over it and things like that. But that isn't what Dyson Dungeons is about. Dyson Dungeons is actually about Dungeons and Dragons. We put on a great Dungeons and Dragons show. This in here. These are parts in process. We put on a great Dungeons and Dragons show, and this stream started because we produce our own dungeon tiles. Why not? Why don't I take some time while the green stuff is still setting to show you some dungeon tiles? We produce dungeon tiles for our show on the 3D printer, and then this stream started because we painted them. Okay. They start out just like black plastic, but they get primed and base coated and washed and detailed, and then they end up looking like warehouses or dungeons or castles or things like that. So our DM said, if you're going to be taking all the time to be painting these, let's put a camera up. So we got like a Ring camera and another camera that wasn't good enough to use for the show, and said, okay, here, we're going to stream you painting these because you're painting them anyway. So what's the difference? The only difference is that when there's only like 2 fervent engine trains in existence, but that's all it takes, doesn't it? That's all it takes is 2 to have a race. That would really be a good kind of thing for my character Ulseth Ralph to do, is to build a train factory. After all, Zoria just bought a porcelain sad donkey retail store. I could start a train. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We could get a racing rival. Maybe Oramont could come back. We could have, the staged races like they did on Star Wars, right? With the pod racers. Okay, well, that was an interesting aside. Oh, no. We don't want Laser to hang around. Laser. I'm advertising dungeon tiles, so I'll get back to that later. So this is how the stream started, and when we didn't have dungeon tiles or minifigs, because I paint the minifigs for our show as well. I have like dozens and dozens of model kits I bought when I retired and never got around to making, so that's why I'm building these. And this is the 4th one that I'm working on. I've been doing this long enough to have completed 3, completed 2, 3. I've completed. Oh my! This is the 5th one because I have to count the Fink eliminator. I got the Fink done. I got the submarine done. I got the Savoia done. I've gotten 3 completed. I've got 1 that was so close to being completed it hurts, and I just never got around to finishing it, the Apollo stack. So this is the 5th one I'm working on. And so we've had a dearth of dungeon tiles and minifigs. So anyway, these dungeon tiles are really cool because, as you can see, they stick to each other. And there's, they don't stick to the cardboard, they stick to each other so they can be taken apart. and rearranged into all sorts of really cool things just like that, because it's the magic of magnets, and the base of each of these and the corners are little ball magnets that grab onto each other. And so there's that. We get corners, we get doors. These dungeon tiles are pretty amazing. And every, now and then keeps threatening that we should probably sell them because they're so cool. They are really, really high quality tiles. So that's why this is called Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, because it really had to do with Dungeons and Dragons until it didn't. This car, it's really been frustrating parts to this, but it's actually more than half done. It's more than half completed. I'm just waiting on 1/4-inch tape so I can tape and paint the stripe. That kind of thing. So these velocity stacks, I've got 6 more of them. I'm going to put them all in a clip. There's a little bit of sanding I need to do on these. Yeah, the green stuff, there were flaws. They were flawed in their manufacture. Yeah, I know that our DM is an amazing voice actor. Gender neutral word. She's just really good at voices and somehow managed to create a NPC character that actually hurts when it hurts her to make the voice. So, yeah. So what I'm hoping will happen is that these will stay in the clips and not pop out. Why am I clipping them like this? Because that little bit down there in the bottom is what attaches to the top of the engine, and all the rest of it needs to be painted. And it's the only place I can grab it and paint all the rest of it. And I'm hoping that they stay in the clip, because if they pop out, they will go flying, boom, and potentially getting lost, and that would be bad. And I would have to spend hours and hours crawling around on the floor and totally emptying the workbench. That was an old clip. It didn't grip the same way. Yeah, I don't want to spend hours and hours climbing or crawling around on the floor looking for one of these if it happens to pop out. Trying to put things out of the way and not succeeding. Okay, these two have little dark spots on them because they had a significant flaw when they were molded. There was just a gap and a little niche. Okay, and I filled that in with some putty, and now I'm going to very lightly sand it down. This. So that the surfaces are all even. This is one of those things where I can't do two things at once. Like I can't talk and sand things at the same time. The other side of the gap is where the sprue was attached. And there's just a little bit of excess plastic there that needs to be rubbed off and down. So I can't, it's just really hard to see without those head magnifiers. I could put those on. I don't really want to, though. So instead of a gap, there's a chance that there'll be a little bit of a bulge here where the green putty is, but I guess that'll be okay. If not, you can always fix it in post. They all seem to be there. These are painted. This is a disaster. This is the rear bumper, and it was very poorly made, and essentially it fell apart. Yeah, so now I need to paint these. I'm going to paint them just aluminium. Almost all of these parts are aluminum or stainless steel or something like that. I'm going to do this, and then you can all watch paint dry for a while. I almost, but did not quite succeed in cleaning up the work surface. I was looking at the tail cone of the car, and it really needs to be sprayed with some more yellow paint. I'm really reluctant to do that. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, this stuff should be here, but it's in the way, so I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm going to here. Here. I wonder if I should finish early today because I don't know. I think I warned everybody at the beginning of this. This is a grumpy day. I'm being grumpy because I'm achy because I'm blaming the weather. It may or may not be fair. I don't know. So each one of these needs to be thoroughly coated in aluminum paint. And you might say, well, these were chrome plated. Why didn't you just leave them that way? There are several reasons why. One is the chrome plating was terribly applied. I mean, it was just like wrinkled and blobby. It wasn't even. So that's one reason. That's not the main reason. The main reason is that nothing on this car was really chrome plated. Okay. It was mostly aluminum and some, stainless steel and things like that. And so the chrome plating was just wrong, historically wrong. And just looked bad. And another reason is that, the whole thing was chrome plated on the sprues. And when taking those off, the chrome plating got messed up, because it was where they were attached to the little sprues or the trees. I put a third drop of paint out. I didn't even need two. It's like one drop at a time, but I really hate wasting the paint because it's not like I can't get more, but I would just as soon not be wasteful. And in this case, it's very wasteful. I mean, I need like 10% of this paint. Too much paint on the brush. So, yeah, buttons. But these are velocity stacks. People nowadays are not familiar with these, but these were an important feature of high performance cars. This one had fuel injection, okay, but a lot of them didn't. And so in order to increase the volume of air and the speed, the pressure at which it entered the engine, these tubes would go above the air intake on the cylinders. And what they did is, as the air was moving, it got compressed. And so it had to go faster, at a higher speed and at a higher pressure to get through the tube. And that had the same effect that later came about through fuel injection. The paint is slightly translucent, so this one, the green putty is kind of showing through. There's a darker spot. So I'll probably second coat all of these, and I might just do that yet on the stream today. It was almost bad. I got careless, and I bumped this with a little too much pressure from the brush, and it tipped it over. That wasn't so much of a problem. The problem would have been if it had popped off of the clip. That would have been a problem. So among the many reasons why I'm getting rid of and painting over the chrome plating, they included historical inaccuracy, poor appearance, largely having to do with the quality of the chrome plating and the fact that the sprue marks, required some of the chrome plating to come off where it was attached to the sprue or the plastic bits to which all of these parts were attached. Oh, when is it? Almost noon? So probably in like 45 minutes or so, I want to put a second coat of paint on all of these just to make sure that they're evenly painted. Okay, so if I missed a spot or something, or like in the case of where the putty was, it's a dark spot. Okay, just to make sure that it's evenly coated, which is in many ways kind of a waste of time because these parts are going to be covered up by the parts I'm going to show you next, which created kind of an epic fail. Okay. So there are those all over here. Why am I moving them all over here? I move them all over here so I can take this thing that was here and put it here instead. Piece of cardboard. These need to be primed. These are done. I would put them in the in-process box, except that they're so tiny I don't want to lose them, so I'm going to leave them in here. These bits are going to go in there as well. Okay. Still a lot to be done on this car. But one thing that needs to be done is something that I had hoped would already have been done, but isn't. And that's these, which were very nicely cemented together, and I got rid of the seams, and then I sprayed them green. And for whatever reason, it just turned out really bad painting. It's supposed to be bright and glossy like this right up in front, but the rest of it isn't. Just that bit on both of them. So weird, right? In there. So I think it was because I was using old paint, and also these were chrome plated, and I took most of the chrome off, but I didn't here. And so this is nice and shiny, but then this isn't. So I need to take all this paint off and reprime them and restart. And I could sand it off, but I'm really hoping, and I don't know if this is going to be true or not, I'm hoping I can just use a solvent and wash it off. I'm going to try a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, which would work if it was an acrylic brush-on paint like most of the paints I use. But probably it may or may not work on this because the spray paint that I used has a different formulation. So I'm just start wiping on this and see what happens. And what's happening is, I don't know, really nothing. It seems to be immune to the solvent. I may end up just having to sand it all off. It makes it nice and glossy. If it stayed like this, it would be like it should. Oh, that is something else I could do. I could just give it a gloss coat. Okay, well, this isn't working. The other thing I could use, and it's a little bit less pleasant, is lacquer thinner. But I don't want to do that until I test it. What I want it to take the paint off, but I don't want it to dissolve the plastic. I know that some of this plastic is susceptible to, like if I were to use acetone, for example, it would definitely dissolve the plastic, and then the whole thing would be a disaster. And I don't want to do that. I'm going to take really want lacquer thinner to be absorbed through my skin, particularly. Mm-hmm. Wow, this has got. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to do this with a fan in a really well ventilated area. May affect the brain or nervous system. Oh, yeah. Yes, this is, the green, this green plastic. It is definitely, definitely doing that. Okay, that needed to be tested. That's for sure. That's a bad idea. Yeah, I'm not even going to touch it to this. It definitely would take the paint off, but you could see that it was dissolving the plastic. So that is not something I'm going to be doing. Everybody will get to see is to watch me, just like when I was sanding this down, when I was originally sanding all of this down to get rid of the mold marks and the seams and the chrome plating, is I get to do it all over again, to take this down to the bare plastic. Yep. Yay, hooray. And I don't want to, I could get really impatient. I'm going to use 600 grit on this. A little coarser than I usually do. And then probably spend several forevers polishing it. Just take the stick out of here. A sticky tack and a stick that I used to hold this for when I was painting it. So, yay. Nothing more fun than starting over on some parts. So I'm on the cone. Let me go back to this. I'm going to jump around a little bit. So this part here is supposed to have a yellow stripe. This is the top right across here. But the paint is uneven. Okay. So when there's going to be a stripe on there, it's not going to be even. So I'm tempted to spray this, to put another coat on. Sometimes that works okay. I've had it alligator on me, like the new coat dissolves the coat underneath. But just like this, if worse comes to worse, I just take the paint off, I guess. So I'm going to put that here. Same sort of thing. There's sticky tack in here like that. Just hold it. And I'm going to spray paint it again. Okay, so the rest of the stream today, I'm going to be pretty much grumping about having to sand off all of the paint and taking this down to the bare plastic and then polishing the plastic with some really fine sandpaper and then repainting the whole thing because it just failed. Reasons. And I'm going to go down all the way down to the rivet line here. And try to carefully clean all of this off. Wonder if it works any better with this, my little sanding block. Maybe it will. Yeah, this green paint is close to the color of the plastic underneath, so it's a little bit hard to tell. Yeah, there, where you can see the edges of where the paint is still on there. Now I'm going to mess around with this until there, that's clean. I'm just going to mess around with this and get as much done as I can until about 12:30, sorry, 12:30, not 11:30. The clock I've got up there never sprang forward. Okay, so it's an hour back behind. It's still on standard time. It's up on the wall. I have to get up on a stool and bring it down and change it. And by the time I get around to that, then it's October and it falls back again, and then it's an hour fast. So I just have to remember, I have to remember to adjust the time, that what I'm seeing isn't the actual time. Well, this has to be done. And like a lot of things that are really sad and boring, it's being done on the stream, instead of being done like on my own time over the weekend or something. So get to suffer through it. What I could be doing, I probably could be talking about something interesting. I can't think. Now I have to be interesting. So I could talk about this car. So this was a groundbreaking car, kind of, in that it actually won the Indianapolis 500, and no other front-engined Oppenheimers or powered roadster ever did again. And it changed, and then all of the other cars were variations of this mid-engine design to this day. So just about the same time, there was another major innovation in racing that I have to say, I'm going to editorialize right off the bat, was the worst thing that ever happened. Not the worst thing that ever happened. I mean, there's probably other worse things that have happened. A very bad thing happened. Okay. When cars, go around, start speeding up, getting fast, there's all sorts of weird aerodynamic forces. And the driver of a race car very much wants their race car to stay on the track. Okay. And especially around the turns, if they want to be able to take the turns really fast. And one way to do that is to what they call downforce, which is setting up the aerodynamics of the car so it pushes down onto the track. It's kind of like it's using the air to make the car weigh a whole lot more. Or to put it in another way, it's like an upside down airplane. The wings on an airplane lift the airplane up into the air. That's what it's supposed to do, right? This is, you take a wing and you turn it over. So instead of lifting up, it pushes down. And so they actually started experimenting with this back in like 62, 63. They used like regular bits of airplane wing and they put them on struts up above the rear end, the tail of the car. It was weird and ungainly. But it actually kind of worked. Not really well at first. Okay? At first, there were some, problems with it in that the downforce wasn't controlled very well. So you'd have situations where it just like pushed it off to the side or it pushed it down in an uncontrollable way. So if there was, for an individual car on the track, it was a huge advantage as they got better and better at this downforce thing, because cars, especially in the turns, could go faster because the downforce pushed the car onto the track, okay, which meant that it kind of stuck on the track, right? So they could take the turns faster, and so their speeds, their average speed around the track was faster. And like I said, if we're just one car on the track, that would be just fine. Now you're just going faster. Yay. The problem is that just as it was pushing down on the car onto the track, the wing created a lot of turbulence. It stirred up the air all around it. And so there was this, like, if you've ever been in an airplane that hit turbulence, it goes bouncing all over the place, right? And it feels like it is just bouncing. It's like a car on a really bumpy road. Well, the problem with these wings is that's what it did to the air behind it. Okay. And so the cars behind it got bounced all over the place. Well, if you were trying to drive fast and you're getting bounced all over the place, you could lose control of your car, which is not a good idea. It's really quite a bad thing to have happen. And so the result of this is that the average speeds of the race cars increased pretty substantially. as these wings were being put on. Okay, and they got more and more complicated. Just, wings on top of wings and little winglets at the edges of the wings and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, the car was going faster, but nobody could get close to each other. The car behind the car, and there was always a car behind another car. Even if you were leading the race, you would catch up to the cars that were, slower than you, so you would be behind a car. All of the cars that were behind, which was everybody, couldn't get close to the car in front because there was so much turbulence that just bounced their car all over the place and made it unstable and difficult to drive. Well, if you're racing, okay, sometimes you want to pass the car in front of you. And that's sort of the point of racing. And that used to be, before all these wings started sprouting up all over the place. That used to be a thing to do. If you were just faster than the other car, you could catch up to it. And eventually, usually, you could find a way to work your way around the car. Even though you were, having trouble in the turns because your car was, not sticking like glue to the racing surface. But that was all part of the skill of racing at that time too, was, to be able to break into the turns, when to hit the accelerator, how not to spin out, that kind of thing. But when you couldn't get close to the car in front of you because of the air, the turbulence in the air, you couldn't pass it because you weren't even close to it, right? And so that's what's happened to racing, especially open wheel racing, like IndyCar and even worse, Formula One. Is that what you'll see when you watch the races is that after the first couple of laps, they all sort themselves off and start just going single file. And if you watch what's happening, you'll notice that they are all pretty much the same distance apart. They're going single file, and there's maybe like 2.5 car lengths between one car and the next. And that's all the way through the line. Well, that distance, that 2.5 car lengths, more or less, is the distance of the turbulent air. Okay? So if they try to get closer than that, they start running into the turbulence and get bounced all over the place. And so they just go in a line. And then passing becomes really difficult. Sometimes, like where certain cars, like Formula One cars, that are really extreme, gotten really extreme in their aerodynamics and all sorts of, little wings and winglets and everything else. The turbulence is so bad that just like passing just doesn't happen. It's not a thing that happens. So as sophisticated as the cars get, all sorts of electronic monitoring and adjustments to the brakes and the wings and everything else, as racing goes, it's not very interesting because cars aren't getting close to each other and they're not passing each other. And that's mostly because of all the wings and the turbulence that they cause. Okay, well, this is taking a while. Not a surprise, because the solvents didn't work. One didn't dissolve the paint, and the other one dissolved the paint and also the plastic. So I'm pretty much just having to sand it all off. Sometimes in places the paint was pretty thick. So there. I might come close to getting one of these done today. This one. Probably this one, because this is the one I'm working on, right? So if I'm going to get one done, it's most likely to be the one that I'm actually doing something on. And then, I don't know, it isn't really important to get these parts done quickly. They're some of the very, very last bits to be attached to the car. It's just that they were ready to be painted, and so I went ahead and painted them, and it just so happened that it turned out to be bad. It just turned out to be a mess, which is, unfortunate. But sometimes things just do not go well, and this did not go well. Taking a lot of sandpaper because this particular sandpaper clogs very quickly. Okay. With the dust from whatever is being sanded fills in the spots, fills in the grit. And then the filled in grit doesn't scrape. So that's my rant. I have to complain about that. It was really cool watching the aerodynamics and people experimenting with it and stuff. But it kind of ruined racing in that it became less racy. Cars couldn't get close to each other. And so it's that compromise between, do the cars stick to the pavement? Do they stick to the pavement and make the job of the race car driver somewhat easier and the corner speeds higher? Or can cars actually get close to each other and, race? Well, this is a little more than half done, but I need another piece of the 600 grit. I had usually been marking these, 600, 800, whatever, to show what the grit level was. I'm not bothering because I'm going to just be using this whole thing up. It's not going to be usable after I'm done here. So there. I'm telling myself why I'm not doing something I usually have been doing. So the same thing actually is happening, like in the NASCAR stock car series. You look at those cars and you don't have wings all over the place like you do on the open wheel racers like IndyCar and Formula One. But a car moving through the air still creates a disturbance, and their issue is it isn't really a wing, it's a spoiler. It's just a vertical piece of plexiglass sometimes on the back of the car above the trunk, if you remember what that word is for sedans. And that disturbs the air just the same way, but not nearly as much. Okay, so you find that cars can get closer together and there's actually passing that happens. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool seeing, oh yeah, let's put wings on the cars. This is a great innovation. They'll be able to stick in the turns and go faster, and they did. And now, as we were watching that, we weren't really aware of how bad that is for the racing itself. You know, as we were watching the innovations. Some of this stuff got really bizarre. There was this race series called the Can-Am series, Canadian American. They ran largely up north on road courses, and there were pretty much no rules. So they had these incredibly massive, like 1,200-1,500 horsepower engines. Just hugely overpowered cars. But they were allowed to experiment with the aerodynamics in kind of interesting ways. So let me talk a little bit about those. It didn't make for better racing. It made for interesting cars because they were kind of weird, but they did. But the whole idea was this downforce thing, which was getting the car to stick to the track, especially in the turns. You wanted it to just adhere to the track. And so, you put upside down airplane wings on things and that pushed the car down. The other thing that you could do with air is, well, air gets in the way. When you're traveling quite fast, the resistance of the air, we don't think of it when we're walking. But if you're ever walking like in a really high wind in your face, you can feel that. It holds you back. So if you're in a car moving pretty fast, you have a lot of that air resistance. In fact, in your passenger car, one of the reasons why you get worse mileage, miles per gallon, kilometers per liter, however you measure it, one of the reasons, the major reason why it's worse, get less of it when you're going fast, isn't so much because the engine is turning faster. Depending on your gearing, it might not be turning terribly fast at all. It's just that a lot of the energy of the engine is being used to push the air out of the way. And it's kind of an exponential thing. It's not like if you're going twice as fast, the air resistance or the amount of energy it needs to move the air out of the way isn't just doubled, it's more than doubled. It's like a multiple, not an addition. And so, yeah, that's a big factor. That's why race cars are made so that they kind of have minimum drag. Kind of the drag is the amount of air resistance. Now that's a real compromise with all these wings, because the wings cause drag. I mean, if they're pushing you down, the air movement is also holding your car back. So there's kind of a thing that has to be balanced. And you have too much downforce, you get too much drag, your top speeds are way down. That's why you want a lot of downforce if you're going through turns so that you stick to the track, but you want practically no downforce when you're just going in a straightaway and you want to go fast. What am I talking? How am I? Where am I going with this? Well, going to all sorts of different places, but I'll try to talk about what happened in Can-Am racing, because there was kind of some real interesting things that happened there. That, like I said, it didn't necessarily make for better racing, but it made for really interesting cars. So one was that, is there any other way to get downforce other than with these wings? Well, one way to do that, and it's actually how the wings work, okay, is to create low pressure, like almost a vacuum underneath the car. That's actually kind of how wings work anyway, is they move the air so that there's a low pressure on one side or the other. If you want to go up, then the low pressure is on the top of the wing, okay, and you can't, the high pressure underneath pushes you up, or the low pressure sucks you up. Either way is not quite accurate, but that's the effect. Okay. So one way to get downforce without a wing is to create low pressure under the car. And in fact, that's kind of commonly used. It was used way back when. The bottom of the car, okay, would be very carefully machined so that it was very flat. Okay, there were no protuberances or anything that would catch the air and create turbulence and drag. But then the other thing you can do is make it kind of concave. So when the air goes underneath it, it speeds up underneath. And that creates sort of a vacuum that can hold the car down. So you don't need a wing necessarily to get downforce. You can do it by manipulating the shape of the bottom of the car. And to some extent the top too, but mostly the bottom. But the effect is low pressure. It's sucking you down onto the track. Well, so one car manufacturer on the Can-Am series, where there are very few rules about aerodynamics. Well, hi, thanks for joining in. And I know you're expecting to hear about Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm talking about race cars instead because I'm building one. But thanks for joining in. So, because we had a first-time chat, I'm going to explain what's going on here again, just so that they know what they're getting into and why. Is Dyson Dungeons puts on a Dungeons and Dragons show, which is an amazing show, and you should watch it. You absolutely have to catch it on YouTube and, or a podcast, and listen to it and watch it and get to be entertained by it, because it's not just us playing a game, but we're putting on a D&D show. Our DM is incredibly talented, and the rest of us are moderately talented. I'm the least talented of the group, but they let me play anyway. So yeah, that's what that's about. And this particular thing is a spin-off. It's kind of like Frasier was a spin-off from Cheers, that kind of thing, because we make our own dungeon tiles, which then appear in the show, and they get painted, hand-painted, and our DM thought that, well, since they're getting painted, let's just, use some surplus equipment, surplus cameras, that kind of thing, and stream the painting. And so that's how this got started. And when there weren't any dungeon tiles or minifigs to paint, She wanted the stream to continue, and I think more than anything wanted me just out of the way, 3 mornings a week. And so the stream continued, and I'm building models, old models actually. Most of them are, the ones I built so far are vintage kits, not new ones. This is a mid-1970s reproduction of the original kit, which came out in the 1960s, which is the one I built. I built this model, not this exact one, but the same kind of model when I was a young teen in the 1960s. And yeah, that's why this is happening. And this particular model is a model of the Lotus-Ford that won the 1965 Indianapolis 500, which is why I'm talking about race cars. So if you think about downforce as being sucked down onto the track, one of these Can-Am engineers, groups of engineers, said, why don't we just actually suck it down onto the track? Everybody's going, what are you talking about? Suck it onto the track. And they meant that. They meant it very, very literally. So what they did was they put fans in the bottom of the race car, okay, that didn't blow down but sucked up, and they it sucked the car down onto the track. I think it kind of worked. There were some problems with it. The tracks weren't really clean. There's little bits of gravel, rubber from the tires. All of that got sucked up as well into these fans, and wherever the exhaust of the fans were, that's where the debris went. But yeah, they had a vacuum car that sucked the car down onto the track, which had kind of the same effect as the wings that most of them were using. So another innovation that happened in the Can-Am series, okay, this was another one of those, oh, well, okay, why not, is if you're racing on a road course, you're getting into a lot of turns, and your average speed, your lap time, how long it takes to go around the track, to a large extent depends on how fast you can get through the turn. Well, there's two things about going through a turn on a racetrack. One is that you need to slow down enough so that you don't spin out in the turn, okay? Because the forces, the sideways forces on the car as you're going through a turn, that's why they put wings on the cars, is it reduces the adhesion on the track. So cars need to, well, that from anybody who's driving a car, is you take a turn too fast, you're just going to go sliding off the road. It's not going to be good. So you need to slow down. And then when you get through the turn, you need to speed up again. And so the extent to which you can slow down really fast, okay, go from a high speed to a low speed, the less time it takes to do that, the faster you get through the turn. So, for example, you stomp on the brakes, and if your brakes aren't terribly good, your car doesn't slow down right away. So you need to stomp on the brakes before you get to the turn, a lot further away from the turn than if your car slowed down really fast. and then your acceleration out of the turn. Okay, how quickly you could start going fast again, depends on the power of the engine pretty much, and the gearing that goes with it. So there was this one car they said, well, what if we slowed down really, really fast? Okay, when we went from going fast to going slow, faster, more quickly than the brakes were capable of doing it. Okay, because your brakes are pretty powerful, but they have limitations. They heat up. Okay, that kind of thing. So what they did is they said, well, they actually did this. Is like, what if we put a big plate, of metal? We know that, there's air resistance. If you're moving fast, the air pushes against things. There's resistance from the air. What if we use that air resistance? It's like, what do you mean? Well, what if when we're coming into the turn, we put up like a big flat thing that creates a whole lot of air resistance, and then the air will slow down the car. And they did. They put a big flap on the car that could be actuated by the driver. It's like an air brake. They use these on planes, really. You can watch it when you land. They have parts of the wing that extend up into the air and slow the plane down, as they did that on the car. So as they came into the turn, this thing flopped up and caught the air, and it just it was pretty hard on the driver, right? Because all of a sudden you were like, the car went from moving fast to barely moving at all. I'm not going to be able to do this without losing these rivets. But I need to sand that off. There's just no way around it. Either that, or it's going to look really dumb. Okay, well, I'm going to guess that no one's going to notice that those are lost. I really hate to lose that detail, but there isn't any choice here. In order to clean this off, those little raised rivets are going to come off. Story model design engineer. I need to take the paint off, and I need to take the chrome plating off. Yeah, so it did improve the lap times. That car slowed down really fast coming into the turn. It flung the driver forward because of the car's slowing down, but your body's not. Put a lot of wear and tear on the car, but it was one of those, because there are no real rules about it, why not give it a try, see what happens? And they did it. It was pretty fascinating. So yeah, this whole aerodynamic thing, when you're doing the Can-Am race like that, and you're just like, this is just a weird car doing a weird thing, that's one thing. But when it becomes an impediment to real racing, which involves cars catching up to each other and passing them, then it just makes it sad. And that's kind of the state of open wheel racing now in IndyCar and Formula One, is that the drive to have sorry for the bad language. I just broke it in half. I broke it. The seam that I had very carefully filled in, I managed, as I'm sanding this, this is just quite a challenge. Yeah, I got my finger in there in the gap and pushed the parts apart. So I'm just going to finish what I'm doing here, which is destroying some detail on the model. Okay. In order to get the chrome plating off and the plastic even. And then I'm going to have to cement that back together. And it'll give me something to do here, won't it? Mm-hmm. Wow, there's always something. So that's what, a lot of relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons is just not relaxing at all. It's what could possibly go wrong? No, even more so, what couldn't possibly go wrong but goes wrong anyway. Fortunately, it can be repaired, but it's like I'm doing this thing for the fourth time. So instead of just doing it once, doing this over and over. So instead of like successfully painting this, right? And then it would have been done, and this part would have been in the done box. No, I'm taking the paint off because the painting went badly. Okay. And and instead of having it be, intact without any seams showing, I broke it in half, and now it has to be repaired and sanded down again. Just amazing, 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 amazing how that has happened. But I got to talk about the Can-Am cars and aerodynamics and how weird they got, how experimentally weird they got. It was kind of like, a lot of that stuff was happening in the 50s and 60s. You'd have all sorts of experimental stuff with airplanes and things that nobody tries anymore. It's too expensive. Nobody takes the risk. Most of them didn't work. It's like they even spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to figure out if they could have an atomic powered airplane. Okay, this was a real thing. They figured, well, if we could keep a bomber in the air, then if we needed to bomb something with an A bomb, H bomb, then it would already be in the air. So this would be readiness, and you didn't have to worry about it being destroyed on the runway, that kind of thing, right? So it was, well, we can either put a big balloon up there, or what we could do is we can have it be an atomic powered thing, and it could just fly for months and months at a time because it wouldn't need to be refueled. Well, there's some practical problems with that. One is, reactors are pretty heavy because of all the shielding that you need to have to keep the radiation from killing everybody on the plane and on the ground. Because this thing, if it's not shielded, would be spewing radioactive particles into the plane and along the flight path. That was a practical problem that they definitely needed to deal with. So the reactor needed to be small. It needed to be kind of not shielded. It made it extremely dangerous, just absurdly dangerous. This whole thing is coming apart. Yep. Where'd my piece of 600 go? The thing from which I was cutting the parts. There. Yeah, I mean, so it was a really interesting time in history in that people were attempting to do just stuff that was really quite bizarre, like atomic powered airplanes. Also, some really amazing things happened, like the SR-71 and the whole Apollo thing, getting to the moon. Here it is, 50 some years later, and we still can't do it again. We could get to the moon in 1969 and 1970, but we can't get to the moon now. Just different times. And back then it was, we need to go to the moon. Why? Well, because the Russians, the Soviets, are trying to get to the moon, and if they get to the moon and we don't get to the moon, then they'll be on the moon and we won't be on the moon. And it's like, so what? But we can't let that happen. And nobody asked any more questions after that because, the Cold War and all. They'd already been beating us into orbit and things like that. So, of course, we were going to get to the moon before they got to the moon. And then we got to the moon, and we even did cool things like a little car that zipped around on the moon buggy. Okay. But after we did that like once or twice, everybody said, well, we've seen that. Short attention span kind of thing. And it's like, okay, now what? So we stopped going to the moon because, I guess we had better things to do with our money than go to the moon. So we stopped, and now it's a thing again. Nobody can really explain exactly why, except that it's, China might get to the moon and then they'll be on the moon. And we could say, and then so what? They'll be on the moon, but they'll be on the moon and we won't. Just saying that the reason, okay, I'm not trying to politic this. I'm just saying the reason that we didn't go back to the moon after 1973 was because there wasn't any reason to go to the moon. It was hugely expensive. It was actually very dangerous, even though, the one time we did have an almost disaster with Apollo 13, everything turned out okay. But it was, okay, well, no one's real excited about it. They don't even watch it on TV anymore. They don't even show live pictures of it. So it's just everybody just sort of lost interest in it. Because there wasn't any other extrinsic value. We already had a bunch of moon rocks. So there were reasons why that didn't happen and why we'd gone over 50 years now, or close to, without doing it again. In fact, we lost a lot of our institutional knowledge about how to do that. It was like, when you're coming back from the moon, you're going 29,000 miles an hour, not 17. So it's not like coming in out of orbit. The heat dissipation on the bottom of the returning vehicle in the days it was a capsule. It's like, how did those Apollo people do that? Engineers, when they're looking at the Artemis program going back to the moon, actually had to look at the artifacts in the Smithsonian and other places to try to figure out how that was done 50 some years ago almost, in order to have a chance at like replicating the success of the mission. So a lot of, they're trying to find engineers who are still alive who remembered how some of the things were done, because the documentation wasn't always perfect. Always that last bit that's hard to reach, and that's why it's the last bit, right? Because all the easy stuff has been done, and then the last bit of hard bit isn't done. Okay, so this whole thing will need to be polished, but there's no sense polishing it until it's been re-cemented, because it broke in half. Because through the pressures that I've been applying to it as I've been sanding it, I managed to break it. I broke the bond that was holding this together. Now it's two pieces again instead of one. Well, this took forever, and I've got a whole nother one to do. So there, look, it's broken. The only thing that's really holding it together is the sticky tack on the inside. So I'll scrape that out. Okay, so pretty much what's happened with this piece right now is I'm right back to where I was over a week ago. Seriously, this is like right back to where it was a week ago. When I first took these pieces off the sprue and cemented them together. You are now seeing one way to lose a week's worth. Well, it's not a whole week's worth of work, because it's only been, a couple hours a week that I've been doing this, but nonetheless, it's essentially more than a week ago that I had these parts pretty much the way they are now, except without the sticky tack all over the inside of it. I'm going to cement them together, clamp it with a couple of clothespins, and then I did an excellent job of making sure the seams didn't show, and I'm going to try to do that again. That's how things go sometimes. This wasn't very relaxing or painting with Dyson Dungeons. This was redoing what had turned out to be pretty nice. The painting failed, and now I'm re-cementing it all. And on Monday, going back to where I was more than a week ago. Such a deal. I get the parts getting cement all over my fingers. Oh man, this is going really badly. I should not be doing this. I should not be doing this time of the day. Okay, that's going to require a good deal of sanding down because I got cement all over the outside of it, and it needs to be, sanded down so that the seams don't show. And so in this case, all the roughness caused by the cement on the outside doesn't show. Oh man, this is a thing. Eventually, either these parts will be done correctly, and they'll look okay, or I'm going to be redoing them so many times over that there isn't going to be anything left of them. I don't know which way it's going to end up. Okay, I'm going to just set this aside here. Okay. If you've been watching this stream with any regularity, you do know that anything I do in the last 45 minutes, and especially in the last half hour, is very likely to be a disaster. And I can't even get two clothespins to, wow, yeah. So there's that. I'm just going to let that not go anywhere. I need to do the same thing with this. Hopefully this time I won't break it in half and have to start over completely. We'll find out. I was going to put a second coat of paint on all of these little velocity stacks. Clearly, I didn't get around to doing that because the time it took to take the paint off the thing that was very badly painted used up the time. So what I'm going to do is stop doing things because this is when things can really go badly wrong, because they almost did. So over the weekend, not much is going to happen. I'm going to prime these mirrors so that they can be painted next week. Okay. I don't need that. That's just going to be in the way. And I'm going to put another coat of yellow paint on here because it's kind of like a drip. And hopefully that will work. Sometimes by doing that, it melts the layer underneath instead of like recoating it, in which case what I did with this and have to do with that, I'll need to do with this. See how that goes. See if I make a disaster out of that or not. We'll need this. It's going to have to be put in here like this in order for it to dry. Try to make sure I put a really thin coat on there. And I'm going to then cover all this with a paper towel so that I don't get dust and dirt all over those little velocity stacks. And Oh, man. Yeah. If I put a paper, what I'm afraid of is that they'll pop out of those clips. But if I put this over it, okay, if I put this over it and they pop off of the clip, they will hit the paper towel and land back in the tray. There. That's the thing. That's what's happening. Lay down a paper towel. So, yeah, things have not gone well. Things did not go well when I was painting yesterday. Things did not go well today because I broke that part apart and needed to re-cement it. Things did not go well when I look at this in the better light and I see that for some reason the paint is uneven. And by putting a second coat of paint on, I might be creating yet another huge mess. I don't know. I'll find out. Oof. No, who there not only was there no progress, but things went backward. Okay. So I cleaned off, I got one of these two. I cleaned the paint off of this one, but as I was cleaning it up, I broke it in half again and just had to re-cement it. So I guess there was progress in that the effort to redo something got redone, but it shouldn't have had to have been redone. Yeah, it was not a. This isn't. That's not going well. This is not going well, but it's not a disaster. Okay, in that the plastic part itself can be. I can get it back to the way it was. That's okay. That's why I was trying some of these things out on plastic parts that could be redone if they needed to be. And then I'll see how this goes with the recoat. On Monday, I'm going to be working on the tires, getting the Firestone white letters white and trying to get the yellow stripe around the outside using the yellow chalk that you can't see because it's off camera there. Okay. I'm going to put a second coat on the velocity stacks. And once they're dry, I will put them in the little thing here so I don't lose them. I will have these primed, and so I'll be painting the mirrors. I'll be taking the paint off of the other velocity stack air intake cover and then polishing and hopefully making the seam successfully disappear on the one that I cleaned up today. So most of Monday, there will be a little bit of progress and a little bit of retro work, but I'm hoping mostly progress. I don't expect the 1/4-inch tape to show up until Wednesday. Okay. And so I'm going to do the experimental stripe painting on the tail cone Thursday, and we'll see on Friday how it turned out. But on Monday, it's going to be mainly, I'll be spending another hour cleaning up the other air intake and hopefully not splitting it in half. If I do, then I'll have to reglue it. Then those will get reprimed and repainted. And that's all that can be done about that. Yeah, and I've got other little bits. So something to look forward to. I've got rear radius rods. I've got the rear radius rods and the wheel knockoffs that are still on the sprues. Oh. Every once in a while, I look at the picture. And go, oh? So this might not be a problem. I thought this was a disaster, but it looks like the parts that fell off weren't supposed to have been on there in the first place. I'll have to see how that fits. But that rear bumper thing, the Nerf bar, that I thought I would have to do major reconstruction on, might be okay. That's happened in a couple of other places where there were just pieces of plastic that should not have been there at all. So on Monday, I'll be painting the mirrors. I'll be looking at how this turned out and either having to take all this paint off of this thing as well as the other air intake. I'll be putting a second coat of paint on the velocity stacks. I'll be working on getting the Firestone logo and the yellow stripes on the tires. Why not? And maybe taking these last little bits, the knockoff hubs and the radius rods off of the sprues. Those are the last pieces that are still on the sprues, and getting those cleaned up so they can be primed, which would be a good thing to do because the air intake scoops, the air scoops, these things, okay, will need to be reprimed as well. You know, I can't say there was a lot of progress. There's a little bit of progress, and there was a good deal of rework. So thanks for watching. I'll be back on Monday at more or less 10, and hopefully making progress. We'll find out. See you then.